If you're a test manager or really anyone in a project leadership role, you have absolutely faced that one big hunting question. It's this core challenge we all have to solve. And today, we're going to dig into the strategic answer, straight from the ISTQB syllabus: risk-based testing. And that question, the one that keeps us all up at night, is this. With limited time, a budget that never seems big enough, and a product that's getting more complex by the day, how on earth do you test everything? I mean, every single line of code, every feature, every possible way a user could interact with it? The pressure for quality is massive, but the resources? Yeah, they're never infinite.
And the answer? The simple, professional, and maybe just a little bit terrifying answer is you don't. You can't. Exhaustive testing is a total myth. It's an impossibility. And honestly, accepting that reality is the very first step toward a much, much smarter and more effective way of ensuring quality.
Okay, so if testing, everything is off the table, what's the plan? What do we do? Well, we focus our energy. We zero in on the areas that are most likely to break and cause the most damage if they do. These are what we call product risks. Think of them as the potential minefields hiding in our software. Our job is to find them before our users do. And that is where risk-based testing comes into the picture. It's the strategy that takes us from that chaotic scramble of trying to test everything at once to a much more controlled, intelligent way of using our testing resources. It's all about making deliberate and, this is key, defensible choices about what to test, how deep to go, and in what order. So the formal definition is that it's all about focusing and prioritizing based on the level of risk. But here's a great way to think about it. It's like an ER doctor performing triage, right? They don't just treat patients in the order they walk in the door. They assess who's in the most critical condition and treat them first. That is exactly what we're doing for the health of our product. All right, sounds good in theory, right? But how do we actually do it? Well, it all starts with step one, finding the dangers. This is the brainstorming part, where we have to ask that all-important question. What could possibly go wrong here? We're going to walk through a really simple but super powerful 3-step process. First up is risk identification. This is all about getting everything out on the table and creating a big, comprehensive list of all those potential quality risks. And I gotta stress this point, this is not a solo mission for the test manager. The absolute best risk identification happens when you get everyone together. You need developers, business analysts, product owners, maybe even some end users, all in a room, virtual or otherwise. Their different perspectives are gold for uncovering risks that one person, by themselves, would just never see. So, once you've got this list of all the potential dangers, the next step is to figure out which ones are just, tiny annoyances, and which ones are total showstoppers. This brings us right to step 2, sizing up the threat. Okay, back to our roadmap here. We're now diving into that crucial second step, risk assessment. This is where we turn that simple laundry list of risks into a prioritized action plan. We're moving from just listing things to actually analyzing them. So, how do we assess risk? Well, it breaks down into 2 key ingredients. First, there's likelihood. What's the actual chance of this bug happening? Is it some 1 in a million edge case, or is it something your users are going to run into every single day? And second, you've got impact. If this bug does pop up, how bad is the damage? Does it crash the whole system, cause a huge financial loss, or is it just a minor visual thing? So what goes into figuring out likelihood? It's not just pulling a number out of thin air. We look at real, concrete factors. Is the technology we're using brand new and super complex? Is the team feeling stressed and under a time crunch? Is the code changing all the time? All of these things crank up the likelihood of problems. And on the flip side, for impact, we're asking a different set of questions about the consequences. Will a bug here mess up a feature that gets used constantly? Could it hurt the company's reputation, or worse, get us into legal trouble? Is there an easy workaround, or does this bug just bring everything to a grinding halt? These are the questions that define how much damage can be done. And here's where the magic happens. We take those 2 things, likelihood and impact, and we mash them together in what's called a risk matrix, just like this one. It's such a simple but powerful tool. You see something with a high likelihood of happening and a high impact if it does? Boom! That's a critical risk. That goes straight to the top of our list. Something with low likelihood and low impact, we can probably live with that one for a bit. Okay, so we've got our prioritized hit list of risks. Now for the fun part, defusing the bombs.
This is where we take all that great analysis we just did and turn it into a real, concrete test plan. And that brings us to the grand finale of our three-step process, risk mitigation. This is where our testing activities are specifically designed and carried out to tackle the risks we've already identified and sized up. This is where the rubber meets the road.
And let's be super clear here. Testing is our #1 weapon in this fight against quality risks. I mean, think about it. When our tests actually find defects, we've directly taken a risk off the table. But even when they don't find any bugs, they're still giving us incredibly valuable information, lowering that perceived risk and boosting our confidence in the product. So when it comes to actually running the tests, you've got two main game plans. With a depth-first approach, you go deep. You hammer away at all the tests for your #1 highest risk item first. Then you move to the next one, and so on. This is awesome for knocking out the biggest dangers right away. Or you could go with a breadth-first approach. Here, you run at least one test for every risk you identified. This gives your stakeholders a really quick early snapshot of the product's overall quality. Okay, this all sounds fantastic on paper, right? But we live in the real world, and the real world can be messy. So let's have a little reality check and talk about some of the common pitfalls you really need to watch out for to make this whole process work.
So what are these common traps you might fall into? Well, first off, a lot of people find it's just plain hard to assess risk. The secret here? Use historical data from past projects and get more stakeholders involved. Second, that initial excitement can wear off. You've got to keep the risks front and center with regular monitoring and reporting. And hey, if you find you're missing some really big risks, that's a huge sign you didn't have the right experienced people in that initial meeting. And just remember, this has to be a living, breathing process, because as your project changes, so will the risks. All right, as we start to land the plane here, I want you to remember one absolutely crucial thing. Risk-based testing is not, I repeat, not an excuse to test less. It's a framework for testing smarter. It's about making sure that every single minute you spend testing is aimed at protecting the product where it is most vulnerable. When you boil it all down, there is one single goal, and that is to apply our finite, limited testing resources to the areas that have the biggest potential to impact the quality of our product and, by extension, the business itself. That's it. And when you do this, the payoff is huge. The next time a stakeholder comes up and asks, "Hey, why aren't you testing this tiny little feature over here?" You'll have a data-driven, risk-based answer ready to go. It empowers you to make those defensible decisions, to talk about quality with real clarity, and at the end of the day, to protect what really truly matters to your users and your business. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to take back to your team, maybe even tomorrow. Based on everything we just talked about, what is the biggest, most important, unaddressed risk that's just lurking in your project right now? And what are you going to do about it?